Hello and welcome to the Revolut Insider Podcast, where we explore Revolut's rocket ship from the inside out, one episode at a time. I'm your host, Alex Carril, and joining me today is Hugh Kingdon, Vice President of Payment Operations. Hi, Hugh.
Hey, lovely to be here, Alex.
Thanks so much for being here today. You are our Vice President of Payment Operations, but not much longer. Today's your last day.
It's so sad, I have to tell you. But yes, today is my final day in the office.
Yes, I should mention that you are the first person that is going to officially retire from Revolut.
Do you know what? There's a lovely word in Spanish for being retired, which is jubilados or jubilant.
Yes.
And that's me right now.
I can tell you're just beaming.
Yes.
I'm sure listeners are going to pick up on that just by listening to you.
Oh, you're too kind.
Well, I was hoping you can share how your time has been here, what legacy you're leaving behind, and what's next for Hugh after life on this rocket ship that we call Revolut.
Well, you know, the first time I met Nick was about 2016, and he came to my offices and he said, look, I've got this idea and we want to do this card, and we've done it with a few customers. I tried to recruit 10,000 customers and I got 30,000.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh, okay, that's got my interest. And he said, then we tried to get another 30,000 and we got 50,000. And I'm listening to his story and I'm thinking, oh, okay. Most fintechs come to me when I was working at Visa and they said they got an interesting piece of technology. But Nick was saying, not talking about his technology, but he was talking about actually how the consumers loved his product. And I'm like, this is good stuff. And so I was head of fintech at Visa at the time. And I was like, okay, this is a fintech that I can back. Here we are, 7 years later.
Wow.
Looking back on this period, not just my time, I was working for Visa for 3 years, but 4 years working inside the rocket ship with Nick and the team. What an adventure that has been.
I can imagine. Yeah, and you've been here since the beginning, basically.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah. Seeing it from outside first and then from the inside.
And it's two very different perspectives, but at its core, the passion and the drive of the people have really stood out. I've had the privilege of meeting with a large number of the fintechs in the UK, and I have to tell you, Revolut really stands out amongst its peers, kind of in two ways. Firstly, the conversations have always been about the customer, and actually the focus has been on delivering more stuff to the customer. And secondly, just the pace at which things get done.
Remarkable.
Do you know, they say that in Revolut, 1 year in Revolut is like 7 dog years. So I haven't been working Revolut for 7 years. I've been working here for 49 years.
Oh, geez. No wonder you're ready to retire.
Exactly.
What was the company like back then?
Well, you know, when I first started working with Nick and the team, there were just 13 people.
Wow.
And so there was this enormous passion to get things done. But even at that point, they had the world-class marketing team who were really excellent at getting customers. But actually, one of the secrets of Revolut's success has been customers recommending to customers. Over 50% of all of the customers we've got in our life have been recommended by other customers. It's amazing. And actually, the other thing that the Revolut did really well, because they were the top of the table and the best of the best, that actually the journalists recommended as well. What fantastic free marketing now and in the past. It's really sustained Revolut's growth.
And what made you decide to join Revolut?
Do you know, that was actually not an easy decision in many ways. Firstly, for the first 3 years, I was working with Visa, and I was a business partner working with Visa and Revolut. So I knew Revolut really well. But there were still some things that were holding me back. But at the end of the day, the things that made it possible for me, actually Revolut was super flexible. Revolut said, we like what you do. You've done some really good stuff with us. You've helped us grow. You've been a great business advisor. And I said, you know, I'm at a certain life stage. I was actually going to retire the first time.
Oh, okay.
I haven't done very well, actually, have I? Here we are again having this conversation. But I was going through these decisions and said, well, how about if you worked part-time? Okay, that might work. And one of the things I wanted to give up, and one of the reasons I was going to retire, was I didn't want to travel. So I was actually the first part-time person and the first person to work remotely.
Wow.
2 firsts. And now the third one is I'm going to be the first to retire.
Wow.
How about that?
Your name is going to be all over the Revolut record book. And you mentioned that you were the first person to work from home. When did you start at Revolut?
So it's about 4 years ago. It was a very fateful period. It was January 2020. Because what happened in March 2020, of course, was COVID. And I was working from home. We'd used all of the tools to enable you to work from home. And 2 months later, of course, COVID hit, and we all had to work from home. And I was no longer special. But there you go. We'd proved the path. So Revolut was ready. It seems so natural now. The world has changed.
Yeah, it definitely has. I mean, and that kind of set the precedent for being a remote first environment anyway at Revolut, because that's continued to today.
Exactly. I mean, I'm really pleased for my colleagues that it's still an option. It's enabling us to get the best talent from all the way around the world, wherever they are physically. And as a Revolut employee, you can choose to be office-based or blend office and home-based or home-based. That is perfect, not just for your lifestyle now, but for your future lifestyle, if you have kids and stuff, or like me. And so I think it's fantastic, and it's giving us access to that talent pool. We have some great employees. I think last count, we had over 100 nationalities working for Revolut. It will be one of those things that helps us grow, because I know that Nick wants to reach 100 countries where we are physically present.
Yes, yeah.
Exactly.
Well, we're so glad that you joined us, and we'll be sad to see you go. It sounds like you were in demand when Revolut was trying to get you as part of the team back then. You obviously knew your stuff. Can you tell me a bit about your experience in payments?
I started my career actually as an engineer. I used to be a silicon chip designer, compiler writer, designing PCBs, and I actually really enjoyed it. But I remember thinking, I don't want to spend the rest of my life in front of a computer screen. Actually, the bits that I ended up enjoying the most were actually talking to customers and selling the stuff. So I ended up selling silicon chips that go in payment cards, those little smart card ICs. And that took me into MasterCard and Mondex, where we were actually involved almost before the internet in minting fiat cryptocurrencies 30 years ago.
Wow.
Before Bitcoin had ever been invented. But we were just too early. The company went bust.
Oh.
That was the first of my business failures. So then I went into Barclays and I was working on e-commerce at the time when actually it was almost impossible to secure a transaction, and you were typing your card numbers into basically insecure websites. And so we had to sort all of that out and make that secure. And we did the world's first 3D secure transaction, which authenticates that it was Hugh that did the transaction. And we did the first one on mobile. And I actually built the first mobile credit card site in Europe.
Wow.
Again, though, unfortunately, too early. It was too early because at that point, you could only get 3 lines of text on a mobile phone screen. And the speed of the connection, not one of these 1 gigabits, it was 300 bits a second.
How do these phones look during this time period, so you can give listeners an idea of what time period you're talking about?
Well, you know, these phones, they weren't quite the big bricks that you see. They weren't quite that bad.
There wasn't texting with those yet.
Yeah, I'm not quite that old. Thank you. I noted that. You're going to get down on the naughty list. But phones were about the size of a cigarette packet. They had a keypad on and just a very tiny black and white screen. And they really did nothing. You know, the best one had Snake and you could play a little game.
No, those old Nokia.
Exactly, that's the thing. Yeah. But they really didn't do anything. And to text, you had to press a number 3 times. And, you know,
I remember that.
Yeah, exactly. So with those phones, we were really too early. So a lovely technical success, but a perfect commercial failure. So from there, I ended up going, working with Barclays, and actually I changed roles. I ended up writing the business strategy to enter India and enter Asia for Barclays. Very different tasks. Launched personal loans in Spain. I spent some time in mortgages. Unfortunately, though, remember that credit crunch?
Oh,
that
2008
that didn't end well.
No.
Didn't end well at all. So I picked myself up and dusted myself off and went back to cards, so back to credit cards. And I worked on moving money from one person to another or one card to another. And we launched that service in Russia. Imagine somebody walking through the snow, going to a mall with some folding money, some traditional ruble notes, sticking them into the equivalent of an ATM, and then being able to send it to the pay TV company, to the water company, or across Russia to their friends. Because at that point, there was no functioning banking system that enabled you to do that. So it's not surprising. It was a great success. And then I did the same for Visa. But actually, once I got to Visa, I ended up working with all of the fintechs. And I loved it. All these young, incredibly bright companies where they were starting not with legacy and with all of the history of investment, but with a blank sheet of paper. and they were designing better products, moving faster and better serving the customers. And it was really liberating. But do you know what? The company that I worked with at that point, we couldn't move fast enough. For every day I spent talking to Revolut, I'd spend 9 days working behind the scenes to get it done, as Revolut would say. So I had to work very hard reinventing all of the processes, redesigning it. Because by that point, I'd worked with fintechs and startups 3 times that had gone bust.
Wow.
I knew that actually the importance of 2 key lessons. The first key lesson is the importance of being first and getting your product out. That speed to market is really, really key. And the second thing I knew was the importance of capital and having money. And so the way in which the company I was working for at the time had designed things, they wanted collateral, they were paying monies very late. And for a startup, it was a nightmare. So I had to redesign all of their business processes to actually make them suitable for customers like Revolut. So I can see why Revolut wanted me, because I'd proven that I could drive change in a complex organization.
Speaking of that, how do you make yourself in demand from a career point of view?
Oh, that's such a hard question. I think that it has to be that you have to learn a lot of key skills. Now, for me, I've tried to put myself in challenging projects and situations. One of the examples is I was asked to build a business plan to enter India. And when we did the analysis, I had to put myself in the shoes of the board of this legacy bank and all of their risk aversion that they would have, and think about how can we build a business plan that's safe, entering a country with a different culture, which is geographically 4,000 miles away, and has actually varied. And so we had to think very hard and do that really detailed analysis. How could we build a risk-free business plan despite the evident risks that were there? The Revolut skill, by the way, we would call it, is called thinking deeper.
Okay.
And that really made me level up. It was an opportunity to use the skills I had learned doing my MBA and put them into action. And that was a real pivotal one for me, because that turned me from being a specialist actually into a generalist. How do you pull together all of the streams of activity across an organization? So then when I was asked to lead the fintech projects in Visa, it was quite natural. How do you pull together the resources all the way across the organization to deliver demonstrable and meaningful change? And as a result, by making it happen, I've been able to establish a reputation for getting things done. And you have to manage your reputation. So gently, little by little, I was involved in the Emerging Payments Associations and other things, got my profile out there.
Okay.
But of course, it doesn't harm to help to meet a few fintechs and get your face out face to face, right?
Exactly, yeah. There's kind of a coincidence there that you were starting in a fintech, let's say before it might have even be considered a fintech. You said 30 years ago, and then you found yourself working with fintechs when they really started coming to market.
And I think for me, people often ask me, what's it like working in a fintech? When you're concerned about working in a fintech, I actually think for me, it's been liberating. Actually, I feel more at home working in a fintech than I did in a legacy bank, with stovepipes between each of the teams. You could only have meetings between people of the same seniority. The boring bureaucracy. I love, actually, the egalitarian, can-do attitude working in fintech. This is actually my true home.
Love to hear that. Going back to making yourself in demand, do you think confidence has anything to do with moving ahead in your career?
It must have. But for me, confidence is built on ability and practice and learning. In my personal life, actually one of my passions is whitewater canoeing.
Wow.
And I love whitewater canoeing. But if you canoe a river that's too much above your ability level, you're going to take a ducking.
Yeah.
You're going to have a swim, or at worst, you're going to roll up again having been bashed over. And you've got to be prepared to take your knocks. So you gently have to increase the level little by little by little. But the key thing here is to keep pushing yourself. Keep trying that little bit harder. I've always tried to find roles where there's an opportunity to do that little bit more and to learn more.
And I'm sure as you've been leveling up, you've seen the fintech world evolve quite a bit.
Oh, my goodness me, yes. We're very lucky and privileged to be here now. The environment post the big financial crash was very supportive of fintechs because it wiped away an entire cadre of competitors and left you with, unfortunately for the poor old consumer, an oligopoly of legacy banks. and not much beneath. And into that vacant space, the fintechs have emerged, partly because the regulators deliberately wanted to generate and encourage competition. And that was a matter of public policy. And actually, they created an opportunity because all the customers were being underserved. And into that opportunity have come companies like Revolut and Monzo and Starling, etc. And they have done very well. But they are now reaching that point where they are not just nice features, they are actually winning very large amounts of customers from the legacy banks. And now the legacy banks themselves are beginning to look very threatened.
Yes. And do you think that you've contributed to this change in the fintech world compared to traditional financial institutions?
I think I've contributed in two different ways. The first way was when I worked for one of the payment networks and brought them into the market and helped them compete, helped design the set of services that fintechs like Revolut would need to be able to support their launch. That kind of ecosystem support that gives them the safe environment that enables them to get started, both in terms of their technical journey, simply making payments, and actually be able to scale. The second thing, of course, has been actively participating in Revolut and being inside the tent rather than outside of the tent, and actually helping our company deliver the change from being a technical service through the growth stages to being a highly profitable, world-class, present in almost 40 countries organization. When I started, they only had 300,000 customers. Now we've got 40 million.
Wow. And you mentioned differences between fintech and traditional financial institutions. Can you elaborate a little bit on what you think those are?
So having worked for a big legacy bank, they're extremely risk averse. I remember one key conversation I had with a CEO of one of those banks. He said, our goal is to be a fast follower. We'll wait for these little organizations to prove the business case, and then we'll copy them. What did that actually mean? What he was saying was actually he wanted to lose some customers, and only when he'd lost the customers would he invest in putting the customers back. I can imagine myself slapping my forehead, my younger self. Oh, there had to be a better way. So one of the differences is that the fintechs have been investing proactively without a business case in providing a better service. So the need to have a business case before you do anything just paralyzes the company. You can't do anything speculatively. And actually what happens is the things that you want to do, you end up putting them on a list for 5 years' time. And you're hoping that by the time you get there, you've actually proven the business case.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're going back to another 5 years.
And for those considering a transition like you did from the traditional, let's say, legacy financial institutions to fintech or other disruptors in the industry, what key lessons or advice do you have based on your own experience?
I thought about it long and hard before I decided to join. It wasn't an easy decision because although I had done it before, I had failed before, or the companies that I worked for before. The first thing I would say is you need to think intrinsically about the organization you're joining. Do you believe in the customer proposition? Is it one that you would use yourself? Is it one that you think other people would use? Has the company evidenced that people are using it? Can you evidence that they're using it more than once rather than just trying it?
Exactly.
But also you have to ask yourself, have they got any money? And actually, because it takes time to build a service and time to prove it, to market it to customers, have they got enough financial stability to be able to get there? And then if both of those things are true, well, go for it. Because if it fails, and I have worked for companies that have failed 3 times, it's actually really soft landing. Because generally speaking, you've learned, you've added a lot more skills, which are very, very valuable. And actually, as part of that process, you have seen the world from a different point of view, and all adds to your CV. So although that company, that idea may have failed, Hugh hasn't failed. And actually, it enables you to get the next role. Normally with a big pay increase, which is bonkers. But anyway, that's how it is. So actually, that element of being a soft landing, the time it's so frustrating, you get so annoyed, and you pick yourself up, dust yourself off. But do you know what, though? I actually feel like I've won the lottery. Actually being here, retiring early, and actually having completed a fintech successfully. Touch wood, they will go on an IPO.
Yeah, let's see what happens.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, on that note, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, I want to ask you what lies ahead for Hugh. We'll be right back with more Insider Views. This podcast is brought to you by eSIM. Got Revolut? Get data. Access mobile data in over 100 countries without the unexpected roaming charges. All within a few taps in your app with Revolut eSIM. Available to customers in the UK and the European Economic Area. Terms and conditions apply. And we're back here on the Revolut Insider Podcast with Hugh Kingdon, Vice President of Payment Operations, and soon to be the first retiree from Revolut. Today's your last day. My goodness.
I know.
Oh.
It's hard to believe.
Yeah.
But working for Revolut, I've still got a full set of meetings.
Okay.
And I still have to complete a bunch of actions, but then I can relax.
There you go. Well,
7:00.
Well, thanks for carving out this time to be on the Insider Podcast. I appreciate it. And let's talk about legacy. I feel like when we move on to new things, we think about what we're leaving behind. And I'm not just talking about it in a somber way, but I mean, even moving on to a new job or relationship or even living situation. What do you think you're leaving behind in terms of legacy?
I think one of the joys about working with Revolut has been the team. And I spent a lot of time coaching the team to help them grow. And actually, part of my biggest contribution has been helping the leaders within Revolut extend their capabilities and extend their comfort zones so that we do more. And it's going to be a joy to be able to read about their success. But in terms of my biggest contribution, there are things that I have delivered. And I have delivered a transformation in profit for Revolut, working on the cost base, ensuring that we have a very cost-effective organization. Initially, when you are a fintech, you're focused on getting live. You're not necessarily focused on becoming profitable. But I've made a big contribution to where we are now, which is a highly profitable organization. I've also been involved in launching new products. And one of the ones that we've launched recently, for instance, is our B2B wholesale cards. What's a B2B wholesale card? What it means is...
Thanks for explaining it. Yeah.
Alex, if you go to a travel agent and you want to book a hotel in Kuala Lumpur, actually, quite often the travel agent will use a virtual card to actually book that travel for you.
Oh, wow.
And we've been providing those virtual cards using an API to our customers. And that's grown really fantastically for a business that we only launched a year ago.
Yeah, incredible.
The tragedy of leaving is some of my best ideas have yet to launch. That brings tears to my eyes in a way, because I'm really looking forward to seeing those ones launched.
Yeah, you're going to be sailing in Spain somewhere and an idea is going to pop into your head. You're going to call your friend up here and you're going to say, hey, have you thought about this yet?
You know me better than you think.
And overall, what's it like been working here?
I can honestly say it's been the pinnacle of my working life. And I don't need to say that just because we're sitting in this office. It has been the most wonderful time of my working life. And I think the reasons for that is the lack of bureaucracy, the lack of stovepipes, the ability to get stuff done is really invigorating. And Revolut is a very supportive organization in that sense for those that want to make things happen. I wanted to change the world. And coming to Revolut, I was able to change the world.
Wow.
And I can look back on that and I can feel quite happy, actually.
Yeah, it sounds like it. You're just beaming. Not just because it's your last day either.
That works.
Then you've been in the industry quite a while now. Was it difficult to say, okay, I'm done, I'm ready to retire?
I'm not sure you can ask me this question. I think I'm rubbish at it because it's actually my second attempt to retire.
That's true, yeah. Maybe you're the wrong person to ask.
But when I think about it, in life, you've got a whole bunch of different things in your life. And work has been very important to me, but it's not the only thing that's important to me. Balance in life, family, etc. And I really wanted to put more balance in my life, reduce the work element and spend more time with my wife, my friends, and do some sailing, some canoeing, some traveling, some of the things that you've put on the back seats.
Yeah.
We were speaking to Alex before the show, and I actually want to win a sailing championship. But I haven't had time to practice and to train. I mean, I go at the weekends, but I actually maybe I'll have time to train. But I think my wife and I have ideas. I think I might have a long list of jobs to do.
Well, maybe a better question would say, when do you know it's the right time to make a change in your life?
I think that's a great question. And I think the answer to that for me is when you think you've achieved as much as you can in your current role. And I think I had reached that point. It was time to do something different.
Yeah. And you've started in Revolut in 2019. So just doing some quick math here. If you're eligible for retirement now, you weren't exactly in your early 20s when you started. I hope that's okay to say.
He's very polite, isn't he?
So Revolut might be a fairly young company at almost 9 years old. But do you think Revolut is a company for only young people?
I can safely say no. And I say that not just because I am old.
I mean,
or
to
older.
work,
It was your indication, right?
No.
I think actually, if you think about people's journeys in life, when I was in my 30s, I was not as good a business person as I am in now. I have learned a lot in that extra 20 years. I have learned more technical skills. I've learned how to manage people. I've learned how to manage projects. I've learned how to get it done.
Yeah.
Actually, companies like Revolut need older people who have the ability and experience to get things done, who've been around the block. And actually, as an older person working for Revolut, it's incredibly rewarding because actually you get more freedom and more ability to get things done than you do in some of the legacy other types of organizations.
Interesting.
So it's actually a better fit, not a worse fit, in my view.
Yeah, I love to hear that. Definitely. What would you say to the next generation who will be the industry leaders and experts like yourself for tomorrow?
I think I kind of had two pieces of advice, but I have to say at the beginning, I'm not sure that when I was younger, I would listen to my own advice. But if I was in a listening mood, I think what I would say is, firstly, invest in yourself and invest in learning. One of the most pivotal things I did in my working career was, firstly, to choose roles which I thought were going to stretch me and actually seek out roles where I was going to learn new things that would enable me to get the role after.
Exactly.
So, make sure you have a semblance of a plan. It doesn't have to be, I'm going to be here at 20, here at 30, here at 40, but more, what are the sets of things you want to do? Where do you want to be 20 years from now? What are the sets of things that you need to have learned by the time you get to that age?
Yeah.
And then the second thing that has been important to me is I've invested in my own learning, and I've always read around the subject and that kind of stuff, and I did an MBA. I remember when I started it, I was 25, and I did it distance learning, which isn't the easiest way, because I was working during the day, doing a full-time job, and then studying every evening at the weekend.
Wow.
That was a bit of a difficult period in my life, I have to tell you. But the skills that I learned during that process have been life skills that I've used all the way through. And I would encourage people to do something similar.
I love that. Thank you. Okay, so now on to you. As you approach retirement, what are your plans and aspirations for this next chapter of your life?
At one stage, it's the most amazingly exciting experience, and I'm really looking forward to it. At the other, I actually haven't given myself time to plan.
Yeah.
How rubbish is that? But if I have my crystal ball in front of me, I think I can see some traveling, some sailing, some whitewater canoeing, some mountain biking, some time at home. I might have to do a bit of DIY, you never know. and actually, I'm really looking forward to a well-earned break. Yes,
you deserve it. Yeah. Do you have any final thoughts or messages you'd like to share with your colleagues and the Revolut community?
Oh, guys, I'm going to miss working with my Revolut colleagues. They have been my life friends on the journey, and we will keep in contact well beyond our time at Revolut. So I think my message is keep in touch, keep innovating, and complete the IPO. I am looking forward to seeing Revolut, whether it be on the London Stock Exchange or the New York Stock Exchange. I am looking forward to reading about your future success. Good luck, team.
Well, on behalf of the team, I'll say thank you. One final question to you, Hugh. I know you had mentioned earlier you probably wouldn't listen to your own advice when you were younger, but just in case, what advice would you give to yourself when you were just starting out in your career?
I would say take the time to find yourself. I actually tried a range of roles. I started in engineering, I tried marketing, I tried sales, I tried big companies and small companies, and it takes time. You have to find yourself. And to find that center, as it were, you've got to try roles, look for the world in different eyes, and ensure that you learn. And you don't have to be the person you thought you wanted to be at 22. Give yourself the freedom to experiment.
I really love that. And on behalf of Revolut, I'd like to say a big thank you to you for all your hard work and always embodying that never settle spirit. So
thank you very much. After my 49 dog years at Revolut, I am delighted to be jubilado.
Yes. Well, happy retirement.
Thank you very much.
All right. And for those listening, thank you so much. And you can add the podcast to your favorites so you don't miss an episode. And follow us on Instagram at Revolut Insider. Thanks for tuning in to the Revolut Insider podcast, where we explore Revolut's rocket ship from the inside out. Until next time, remember, the sky's not the limit, it's just the beginning. Revolut, change the way you money.